Have you ever been forgotten by someone you love the most? Imagine, after years apart, you meet your soulmate again. But instead of running to them, they look at you like you're a stranger. That's what Noah Carter faces when he returns to find Bravo, the K9 dog who saved his life on the battlefield. But what happened to make Bravo forget everything? And can Noah awaken his memories before it's too late? Before we continue, comment and tell us where in the world you're watching this video from. And we have a little challenge for you. Watch the whole video. Do you dare to accept the challenge? And if you believe in touching stories, don't forget to subscribe now, because tomorrow there's a special story for you. Have you ever felt like you lost a part of your soul? You know, there are times when separations seem temporary, but when you come back, you realize everything has changed forever. Under a gray Wyoming sky, dry winds sweep across the deserted fields, carrying the smell of dust and early rain. Noah Carter, a 39-year-old veteran, grips the wheel of his old Chevy Silverado, his eyes staring blankly at the road ahead. This road not only takes him to the Animal Rescue Center, but also takes him back to the past, where he lost a part of himself. He had it all: a career, teammates, a purpose in life. But the war took everything away. When the war ended, the only thing left inside him was a cold void. But there was one thing he couldn't let go of: Bravo, a yellow Labrador, not just a teammate, but a lifeline that saved him from death. They had been a team, one soul in two bodies, facing fierce ambushes, going through hell and back together. But on that fateful day, when Noah was badly injured, their worlds had turned in two different directions. It had been 3 years. Now, standing before Noah was a small, quiet camp set in the middle of burnt grass fields. No barking dogs, no sign of a warm reunion waiting. He stepped out of the car, each step on the dry ground, touching an old scar in his heart. He wasn't sure which hurt more, missing Bravo, or the fear that it had forgotten him. Savannah, the center's manager, was waiting by the gate. A strong woman, her eyes shining with sympathy that Noah didn't want to receive. "He's over there," she said, pointing to the wooden cages at the end of the yard. Noah nodded, swallowing back the lump in his throat. He took a deep breath and stepped toward the cage. And then he saw it. Bravo. Its fur was grayer than before, and its sturdy body was now a little thinner. But it was still Bravo, the friend who had braved bombs and bullets to protect him. Noah's throat was dry. He stepped closer, calling its name, his voice hoarse and broken. "Bravo, it's me." But then his heart sank. Bravo didn't recognize him. It didn't bark. It didn't wag its tail. And there was not a hint of familiarity. The brown eyes that had once burned with determination were now empty ash. It stood still, unfamiliar and wary. Then it backed away. Noah froze. Not his Bravo. Not the dog who had run into the gunfire to save him. Savannah spoke, her voice filled with concern. "He's not himself anymore." Noah gripped the wooden fence. "What do you mean?" Savannah sighed. "I don't know what happened after he left the army, but since he came back here, he doesn't trust anyone, especially not men." Noah felt a pang in his heart. What had Bravo been through after he was transferred? What had he endured to become such a confused soul? He leaned down, his voice trembling. "Bravo, you don't remember me?" No response, just silence. Bravo had completely forgotten him. Or worse, he remembered, but he had learned not to need him. Another pain crept into Noah's heart, a feeling he didn't want to admit. Had he lost Bravo forever? Savannah looked at him with sympathy. But Noah doesn't want pity. He wants Bravo. He wants his friend back. No, this isn't the end. Because if you've ever loved someone deeply, can you disappear from their heart? He clenched his fists, standing silently in the drizzling rain. If Bravo has forgotten him, then he'll make it remember. If you've made it this far, I believe you have a seed of love in your soul. Not everyone has the patience to feel this story. Only those whose hearts are moved can understand its deep meaning. Bravo may have forgotten, but is love gone? If you believe in the power of connection, please like this video so more people can witness this story of loyalty, memory, and healing. But the most important question still lies ahead. Can Noah help Bravo remember? And if so, what happens when the past resurfaces? Stay tuned. Have you ever looked into the eyes of someone you once loved deeply, but now see you as a stranger? That was the most painful feeling Noah Carter had ever experienced. Early in the morning in Wyoming, the sky was covered in a thin layer of fog, making the Animal Rescue Center look even more lonely among the endless fields. The wind whistled through the old wooden boards, carrying a biting cold, but the cold in Noah's heart was even deeper. He turned around. He couldn't leave Bravo like this. He couldn't accept that the dog who had once braved bombs and bullets to save him was now afraid and avoiding him like a stranger. If a beautiful memory could be buried by pain, could it be awakened by love? Noah slowly walked to Bravo's cage, not in a hurry, not forcing it. Bravo still stood there, isolated from the world, his empty eyes staring into the void. Savannah stood a few steps away, watching silently. Noah said nothing. He just stood there, letting Bravo feel his presence. It was so quiet he could hear his breathing, the breathing Bravo had fought to protect all those years ago. He slowly pulled a small object from his pocket, an old piece of cloth, torn and frayed by time. No ordinary object. It was part of the army jacket Noah had worn during his years of fighting. The one Bravo had bitten into to pull him out of the line of fire, the one soaked with their memories. Noah bent down, gently placing the piece of cloth on the ground. For the first time, Bravo's eyes flashed. It was only for a moment, a blink, but Noah saw it. He remembered something. You remember, buddy? A feeling of nervousness gripped Noah's chest. But then, Bravo turned away. The light in his eyes went out like a small flame blown out by the wind. Noah clenched his fists. He remembered. But he was fighting his memory, just like Noah had. Savannah shook her head, her voice deep and prophetic. Some wounds never heal, but Noah didn't believe it. War doesn't just take lives, it steals the souls of those who survive. Noah understood that better than anyone. The nightmares, the sounds of battle echoing in his head, the moments when his body had left the battlefield, but his mind had never truly left. The mornings when he woke up to an empty apartment, the sound of the wind blowing outside the window, and inside, an endless emptiness. Bravo was the same. They weren't just a man and a dog. They were two lost souls. And if Noah couldn't pull Bravo back, then maybe he couldn't save himself. The soft sunlight filtered through the cracks in the wooden cage. Noah knew that if he pushed Bravo too hard, the dog would only retreat further. So he tried something else. He sat down. He didn't say anything. He didn't try to get Bravo's attention. He just sat there, with the old rag in front of him. He let time do its work. An hour passed. Bravo still didn't move, but Noah didn't give up. 2 hours. Savannah went off to do something else, but Noah still sat there. 3 hours. And then something magical happened. Bravo stirred slightly. He was no longer looking into space. Noah held his breath, waiting. Bravo lowered his head slightly, his gaze fixed on the rag. Then he took a small step forward. One step. It was small, but Noah's whole world was shaking. He still remembered. Bravo was still there. There are moments in life when you have to face yourself. What do you do when the person you love most is no longer themselves? When they're lost, when they forget you, when painful memories overshadow all the good, do you leave or do you stay? Noah chose to stay. And Bravo had just given him a sign that it was worth it. Savannah stood at a distance, silently observing the moment. She'd never seen Bravo react like that to anyone. "Do you think he'll remember?" she asked softly. Noah didn't take his eyes off Bravo. The dog was still there, still alert, but something had changed. A small, undeniable belief. He smiled slightly. "I don't think he's ever forgotten. If you've made it this far, I know you have a heart full of love. Not everyone takes the time to feel a story like this. But you stayed. Because you understand that love, loyalty, and memories cannot be easily forgotten. If you believe that love can heal the deepest wounds, please click share so more people can know this story. But what happens next? Noah took a step, and so did Bravo. But will the road ahead be easy? Will they be able to overcome the ghosts of the past, or will they be dragged back? Stay tuned. What happens when the past comes back? When buried memories suddenly rise like waves crashing against a cliff? Imagine losing a part of your soul. And then, after years, a small moment brings it all back, as strong as if it had never left. That was the moment Noah Carter had just experienced. For the first time in years, Bravo took a step toward him. Not a mighty lunge like that day. Not the eager leap of a canine dog seeing its beloved handler. Just a small step. But to Noah, it meant the world. He held his breath, not daring to move. Every sense was on edge, as if even the slightest movement could send Bravo retreating into its fearful shell. He whispered, "Do you remember, buddy? The ambush in Helmand?" As soon as the words left his mouth, a gust of wind blew across the grassland, kicking up dust as forgotten memories resurfaced. Bravo flinched slightly, but it didn't back away. Savannah stood silently behind, her eyes wide with surprise. She had never seen Bravo react like that to anyone. Bravo shuddered, its brown eyes wavering, as if it were at war with itself. Memories, pain, love, fear. And then, it took another step. Why do small moments have the power to change everything? Because sometimes, even a small step is a miracle. War doesn't just leave scars on the body. It leaves scars on the soul. But which pain is more cruel? The pain of terrible memories, or the pain of forgetting what once mattered most? Noah remembered that day clearly. Helmand, a cold name, a place of nothing but hot sand, blood, and fragile life. They were ambushed. Gunfire rang out from all sides. Bullets flew through the air like angry bees. Noah remembered the burning heat on his skin as he fell, the blood from his arm running down his uniform, soaking the sand at his feet. He thought it was the end, but Bravo had not left him. It rushed through the gunfire, bit into his sleeve, dragged him out of the encirclement. When Noah woke up in the military hospital, Bravo was no longer there. He had lost it that day. And now, after so many years, it stood before him, looking at him with eyes that were both strange and familiar. Noah knew Bravo remembered, but did it dare to remember? Noah looked down at his hand. It was shaking. He slowly opened his palm, leaving it empty in front of Bravo. No command, no pressure, just an invitation. Bravo looked down at his hand. His gaze moved slowly, from the empty hand, up the arm, up to Noah's face, which had aged over the years. And then, something Noah couldn't believe happened. Bravo took a deep breath, and then he gently placed his nose on his hand. Not a hard touch, not the excited lick of the past, just a light touch. But it said it all. I still miss you. Savannah covered her mouth, her eyes stinging. Noah bit her lip, trying to hold back the tears that were threatening to fall. Not because of pain, but because a fragile hope had been revived. Bravo was still there. It had never really left. What about you? Do you believe that lost things can still be found? Do you believe that no matter how many years have passed, no matter how painful the past, love can still overcome everything? Leave a comment below this video. Share your story, someone you loved but lost. Because who knows, one day you too will have a moment like Noah and Bravo. A moment when the pieces of your heart are put back in place. But this is not the end. Noah and Bravo have just touched each other after many years apart. But is that enough? Will Bravo come back? Or will the memories of war continue to engulf him in fear? This story continues, and it will take us to places no one expected. Have you ever felt that, no matter how much time has passed, there are pains that can drag you back to hell in just a moment? For Bravo, hell was not a distant place. It was not a faint memory, but a nightmare that was always lurking, just waiting for the slightest noise to drown it again. And that noise came. Boom, boom, boom. A military helicopter flew across the Wyoming sky. The roar of the engine tore through the peacefulness of the quiet afternoon. And in that moment, Bravo collapsed. The yellow Labrador barked, darting around the cage as if thrown straight back into the battlefield. Everything inside him shattered. He was no longer here. He could no longer see Noah or the rescue center. In his head, bombs exploded and gunshots rang out. Sand and smoke, blood and screams. It wasn't Bravo anymore. It was a K9 dog trapped in war again. Noah saw it. He'd been there. He knew exactly what was going on in Bravo's head, and it hurt him more than anything. Savannah screamed, "Noah, do something!" She was afraid. Panicked dogs could be dangerous, even if they had once been the most loyal of companions. But Noah wasn't afraid of Bravo. He was afraid that if he didn't do something now, Bravo would sink even deeper into the hell it was trapped in. But how could you save a panicked soul? He couldn't hold it. He couldn't comfort it like a normal dog. So he did the only thing Bravo could understand. He stood still. No running, no yelling, no giving orders. He just stood there, an unshakable presence. And then, in a strong but deep voice, he spoke, "Bravo, it's okay. We're not there anymore." For the first time in his panic, Bravo raised his head. His wild eyes met Noah's. In that moment, amid the chaos, amid the jumbled memories, Bravo saw something familiar. Noah. Not the battlefield, not the flying bullets, just Noah, the only friend he had ever trusted. Bravo paused. It was a fragile moment between awareness and darkness. One wrong step, and he could collapse again. Noah took a deep breath, slowly taking a step toward him. Not fast, not forceful, just one step, but carrying all the faith he had. And then, Bravo took a step toward him. A small step, but for two warriors, it was a long journey. No one spoke, only the wind whistling through the fields. Bravo lowered his head, trembling slightly. Noah took his time. He waited. And then, Bravo did something he didn't expect. It rubbed its head against his leg. Not the excited touch of the past, just a light touch, like an acknowledgement. I remember. Savannah covered her mouth, tears welling up in her eyes. Noah said nothing. He knelt down, placing his hand on Bravo's head. For the first time in years, they were truly together. No more war, no more past. Just a man and a dog, finding themselves together. Noah knew this panic wouldn't be the last. The psychological wound doesn't disappear overnight. But the important thing is that Bravo didn't run away. It chose to stay. And that's the beginning of its healing. Have you ever felt like the past was chasing you? Have you ever felt like a painful memory could swallow you up in a flash? Will you run away? Or will you face it? Share your thoughts in the comments. Because sometimes, what we fear the most is what needs healing the most. But is that enough to truly bring Bravo back? Noah pulled it out of the darkness once. But what happens when the darkness returns? This story isn't over yet. And the next part will keep you glued to your seat. Have you ever had a moment in your life when everything seemed to click into place? A moment when everything you had ever lost, everything you had ever longed to find, suddenly appeared before your eyes. Not as a distant dream, but as a reality you could touch. That was the moment Noah Carter had been waiting for. The next morning, the Wyoming sky was clearer than usual. The thick clouds from yesterday had cleared, giving way to the first rays of sunlight filtering across the dry grass. Noah returned to the rescue camp, carrying something small, but filled with a meaningful past. An old training whistle. It was something small enough to fit in the palm of his hand, but it held a reminder of loyalty, of friendship, of the days they had fought together. Noah stood in front of Bravo's cage. This time, he didn't need to knock. He gently brought the whistle to his lips and blew a short blast. The sound echoed in the quiet space. Not loud, not noisy, but with the power to penetrate every memory. And then, Bravo raised his head. His eyes were no longer empty, no longer unfamiliar, no longer panicked. Noah held his breath, waiting for a miracle. Bravo stared at him. For a brief moment, everything stopped, and then he rushed toward him, no longer hesitant, no longer wary. Only a dog found the person he once considered everything. Bravo buried his head in Noah's chest, not out of fear, but because he knew this was where he belonged. Noah laughed, a broken, shaky laugh mixed with tears. He buried his face in the golden fur that had turned gray with age. His voice choked up. "You saved me again, old friend." Savannah stood still, her eyes stinging. She didn't need to ask. She knew that Bravo was no longer a lost dog between two worlds. He had found his home. Noah sat there, holding Bravo tightly, as if afraid that if he loosened his grip, the dog would disappear into the darkness again. But this time, Bravo wouldn't leave. The sun was high in the sky, casting a soft light over the fields. Noah slowly stood up. He looked at Bravo, then at the barn door. He took a deep breath, then opened the door. Bravo slowly walked out, but this time without fear. No more walls to imprison, no more memories to bind. Noah walked away, and Bravo followed him. But this time, there was no fighting. Have you ever found something that you thought you had lost forever? There are things in life that seem to have left us forever. But sometimes, all they need is a signal to come back. Maybe a hug, a phone call, a word that you hesitated too long to say. So if today you also have something precious that you have lost, do you dare to step towards it? Leave a comment below. Share your story about something you once lost but always hoped to find again, because who knows, this very moment may be your signal. Thank you for staying until the end of this story. If you are still following, it proves that you have a heart that knows how to love, a soul that can vibrate before the profound things of life. Noah and Bravo's story is not just about a soldier and a dog. It is about connection, about things that seem lost but can be found again, about loyalty and healing. Sometimes we think that the past has buried everything, that once lost, there is no way to return. But the truth is, love, loyalty, and memories, even though buried by time, are always there, just waiting for a moment to rise. And perhaps, like Bravo, someone in your life is still waiting for you to come, waiting for a signal from you to return. If this story touches you, please like it so that more people can see and feel it. If you think someone out there needs to hear this story, please share it with them. And now, I have a question for you. How would you rate this story from 0 to 10? Leave your number in the comments. But don't leave yet, because the next story is even more meaningful and deeper, and it might change the way you look at life forever. Click on the video that's on your screen. A story you don't want to miss.